Hey, what's up? Welcome to the AV Club. Finally, it's here. I know, it's taken a long time. I hyped it up too much. I shouldn't have. Whatever. Now it's here. Anyways, my first guest, his name is Ben Schenck. He's the founding pastor of Awaken Church here in Round Rock, Texas, and he's a former Army Ranger. Pretty cool dude. He's a savage. His workouts are insane. We have a workout scheduled for next week, so I'm a little nervous for that. But we had a great conversation about his past as a Ranger and his present as a pastor and all the stuff in between. We even talked about Luka and the Mavs a little bit, man. Hey, shout out Mavs. But yeah, man, you catch Ben on Instagram at Benjamin Schenck, SCHENCK. And then you can find Awaken Church if you're interested. They have their services online at awakenchurch.online. Awesome. Thank you guys. Enjoy the episode. We were talking about Luka. We were talking about LeBron. Oh, dude, Luka is like, he plays. This is what I was telling. I was on FaceTime with my buddy Cade the other day. Mm-hmm. And Luka plays like he's playing an open gym every single game. Like, if you look at him, like, of course he gets mad because he's like young, he's got a temper, but he plays like he's legitimately playing with his friends that he loves, and he's just having a good time, and he's like laughing, and you see him do these step back threes from like 4 feet behind the 3-point line, and like that's something I never mastered in high school because I was like, I played really well in open gym, and in the games I played okay, but there was definitely a difference.
But don't you feel like, especially in that sort of setting, like there's so much restriction on you where I feel like, especially as a coach, one of the things that's so difficult is like, how do you maximize, we're talking about like the potential of players. Mm-hmm. And like some players, it's like, man, you need that structure. You need, hey, you go from X to Y to Z, and then, here's how we're going to score. But with some others, it's like, you just need a free flow.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about, the Mavs and obviously Luka. It's like, okay, hey, you be you, you be yourself. And then when you see that come out, it's like, wow, you can really see his talent on display.
Yeah. It's crazy. That's something I wish I could have mastered with that, man. Because I've almost played college ball. I went to I had a tryout. I got invited to a tryout, which was pretty cool. But it was like what's it called? Not JUCO.
Like NAIA.
NAIA. That's exactly what it was. So I got an NAIA. They had invited me to go to a practice, and then I went, and it was really weird. I was training actually with Daniel and his dad right after my senior year. And
because that whole family is
basketball, sports, yeah. Basketball, and then I think Daniel played football his senior year, something. But we play. I don't know if you know who Gia Perkins is, but she is a WNBA player. Okay. She graduated from the high school we went to, and so did her dad. Her dad is Johnny Perkins. He was in the NFL.
Oh wow!
And she went to the WNBA, and so she came back, and somehow they got to know her, or I guess good enough friends where they're like, hey, we have a gym access, you want to come hoop? And so she was like, yeah. So we trained with her for a little bit, and it was like the time between basketball season ending and then like the summer, and then that practice was in the summer, that tryout, I guess you could call it. And we were training with her, and then I remember we were doing this one move. We were at the top of the key, and I spun, and I tried to get past her, and I kind of did, but then whenever I pulled up to shoot at the free throw line, she like went to block, put her foot out. I landed on her foot, rolled my ankle. And so like that was like a week before this tryout. And so I went to a tryout with like a bum ankle. I like to use that as an excuse, but man, I was so mad because I was like, man, this was my chance. But yeah. I mean, it worked out way better that I didn't go to that school because it was, small. It was like northern Oklahoma. It was like a 6 or 8 hour drive from
you're away from all your friends and family.
Yeah. But actually Daniel was in that tryout with me. We're like always at the same place at the same time. But we were at the tryout together, and he's known for his shooting. That's what he was. He was the shooter.
So I haven't played with you guys. We need to go out on
we
got some courts out here. We need to go out there and just hoop up for a little bit.
Dude, I think I saw you out there in the court too with Hero.
Probably. Coda was doing. He had his first season of basketball. My oldest son, and so. I don't know the first thing about basketball. All I played was, just out on the courts,
Right.
And so I never played in school or organized. And so I'm out there and I'm just looking up YouTube videos of like Curry, like how to dribble and doing the little drills. So I've got him out there like doing his
smart.
thing. But it was a blast, like getting out there and like getting to learn just some of those skills, because I was a baseball football guy.
Baseball, football, yeah.
Yeah, and so basketball was like I had enough athleticism to kind of, I guess, hold my own. You know, anybody that had any sort of skill, you would probably take me. But if I had enough athleticism to kind of
That's cool.
fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
I guess.
Actually, I think this was like recent, like when me and Taylor were recently dating. I went to a game and watched Coda play.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know
remember
who
that
you
now.
were. She had told me about you, of course, and Rashawn, and then I was sitting by you guys, and I was
That's right. Dude, I love my son to death, but man, that was a rough season for him. He was playing up and in a competitive league, and so
Oh, yeah.
I just had him bite off more than he could chew.
That's cool though. That's how they learn and get. He'll grow from that definitely. So that's cool.
Yeah, that was good, man.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening after you go out there? You don't end up making it,
Well, they offered me a small scholarship, like not even enough for like room and board, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
to play on their JV team. And so it was like my pride. I was like, man, I don't want to play on JV.
Yeah.
If I don't want to pay to play on the JV, if it was like a full ride to play on the JV, I probably would have done it. But if it was like, hey, you still got to pay all your tuition minus $2K, and then play JV maybe if you can make it, So I was like, no, I'll just hold back. But that was right out of high school, and so my first year of college, I didn't even go anywhere. I just stayed home and went to JUCO.
Oh wow.
Yeah. There's like a campus like. So I lived in Granbury, and like 35 minutes, probably, I don't even know which direction. Weatherford was the next town that had a college, and they had a junior college there, and it was a full campus, full facility. And they had a campus location in our town. So I just drove like 4 minutes down the road to get to college classes and back.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a crazy time.
Saving some cash.
Saving a lot of cash, but I was super bored and had no friends. And yeah, but it was good for me though. It like pushed me to get out and go to college.
Yeah.
So, where'd you go to college?
I went to Missouri State.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in Springfield, Missouri. Yeah, I went to Nixa High School, which is kind of like a suburb of Springfield. And then I went there on like a 4-year-old full ride scholarship for the ROTC, and then had an academic scholarship.
Oh.
And I was a decent baseball player, kind of like all conference player, but definitely not good enough to play. Missouri State was coming off of it was the College World Series, and I want to say I think they got swept in the College World Series, but next level talent, like guys getting drafted.
Wow.
That type of talent, and so I doubt I could have even walked on the team. Like they were really, really good at that point in time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so went to Missouri State, but it was a great school, man. I loved it. It was nice being fairly close to home, especially during that time because my dad was deployed, and that was right after 9/11.
Oh, wow.
So I was the oldest and just felt like, hey, I want to be close to home.
Just in case, yeah.
Yeah, and so Missouri State was just a great option, for me. So I ended up getting like a house with a bunch of buddies.
Oh, that's
right
cool.
off of campus.
That's
we call
fun.
it the Cherry Street Manor. Shout out Cherry Street Manor.
That's funny, man.
Yeah, man.
So you were born and raised in Missouri, I'm assuming?
No. So my dad was career military.
Okay.
And so we moved 13 times until I hit high school.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were all on the East Coast in the Midwest. And then in 2000, we moved to the small town of Nixa, Missouri, which if you've ever watched The Bourne Identity.
I think I have, but it's been a while.
If you ever watch The Bourne Identity, there's a scene where I think it's the second one in the series where they tell Jason Bourne's identity and where he's from, and they give like his real name, and the town where he's from is Nixa, Missouri.
Are you Jason Bourne?
Dude, that was the joke, man, back in the day.
Man. I ruined it. My bad.
But it was hilarious. Like that's our claim to fame, Nixa, Missouri, Jason Bourne.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, man. No, it was interesting. We moved a ton up into that point, and then it was great because we've in 2000, it was the very first time that we actually got to like kind of lay down roots, because we'd
Yeah.
only been in one spot for probably more like 2 years.
Wow.
And that town, I spent 8 years of my life there. And so even now being here, you know, in the burbs of Austin, we've been here for 4.5 years, but that's still the longest I've ever been in one place is
Wow.
Springfield, Missouri. So I definitely claim it as home.
Yeah.
Went to high school there, went to college there.
That's cool. Yeah. Wow, man. So you made like most of your friends there, I'm assuming, and yeah, most of your connections, like
A lot of connections.
yeah. That's cool. That's cool. Where all did you move? Like prior to that, like
Yeah, my dad was a field artillery officer. And so he did his training in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which, if you know Lawton, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. But that was where he did a lot of his training. And then we moved. I was born outside of D.C. We're in Lawton. We were up in upstate New York.
Oh, that's cool.
Down in Florida at Central Command in like Tampa Bay.
Dang.
We moved around a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. But I really like Missouri. Most people probably can't even point it out on a map. But
Yeah.
Missouri's great because, one, the town of Springfield, it feels a lot like Portland. Which a lot of people don't know. It's kind of like the Portland of the Midwest.
Oh.
It's got a real eclectic vibe. One of the reasons me and my wife moved out here to Austin was because it had that same type of feel. And it felt a lot like where we were from.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really like that with the feel of a smaller city. But there's also a ton to do outdoors. And that's the other thing what we liked about Austin was you can do all sorts of stuff outdoors. You can go on hiking, you can go on bike rides, and Springfield was kind of that same way. Like there's a lot of like endurance athletes that live in that little city, and they've got their own like little training group and stuff. And so
That's cool.
It was really, really cool to grow up there and kind of kick off your career
Yeah.
from that spot.
That's crazy. I did not. So I didn't. I guess makes sense. I don't know much about your past, like your childhood or how you grew up. Or I had no idea your dad was lifetime military.
Yeah.
And so that makes a lot of sense on why you chose that. Were you in ROTC in high school?
Junior ROTC. Yeah,
Junior,
man. I was
yeah.
one of those kids wearing the corny green uniform around, once a week.
Yeah.
And so I think they called us the pickles whenever we'd walk around.
That's pretty funny. Dang.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah, growing up, it was like that's all that I wanted to do. Even from the time when I was like a little kid, I remember my parents brought us to like this vacation Bible school, and so they drop us off there. And so me and my sister are about 1.5 years apart, and we were talking with these kids, and I was probably kindergarten or first grade, and I remember getting in a fight with this kid at vacation Bible school because he wanted to be a chef and I wanted to be in the Army. And I thought it was weird that somebody wanted to be a chef. And so he said that what I wanted to do was weird. And so we ended up getting in a fight and I got kicked out of vacation Bible school.
That's crazy. Did you remember that? Like, do you clearly remember that, or were you told that?
No, I clearly remember that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Man, that's a good memory. I cannot remember that far back.
Yeah, we had me and my sister got into all sorts of trouble, and so some of those moments are a little bit easier to pick out than the day to day.
That's funny. So ROTC in high school, that's crazy. So I remember like the high school kids where I went, they were, I don't know why, but they're just like made fun of. Were you like kind of messed with for that?
In high school, junior ROTC, it's really an interesting group.
Yeah.
I was an athlete. And so I had that group of friends from baseball and football, and then academics. Was a pretty decent student. Definitely not like valedictorian or anything, but like National Honor Society, that sort of thing. So I had that kind of group of friends, and then the other group of friends that I had were the junior ROTC students, and it was a lot of kids. This is the way it was, at least in our school, but a lot of kids who had some rough background, and were just looking for a group of people to connect with.
Right.
And one of the misconceptions is that like junior ROTC like preps you for the military. It's actually not. The junior ROTC in high school actually helps you become a better citizen.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
What they do is they usually have a retired officer and a retired non-commissioned officer who run the program. And honestly, they do a great job at really providing some structure some community, and really given a lot of kids vision and purpose, where in their home life they may not have it. And so looking back now, like I see just a huge benefit from that time there in junior ROTC. And while I had a lot of other friends and a lot of other community, a lot of those kids, that was really a saving grace for them just to graduate high school. That was a big deal for them and their family. And so there was a lot of benefit looking back now at that program. And I can still remember the Lieutenant Colonel Anton. Incredible dude. Every single day he would show up and he would have the joke of the day. And so his thing was he was always sharing these jokes with these students. And so everybody remembered Colonel Anton, not necessarily by any of the things that he taught, but just by who he was. You know, he was somebody that cared for them and loved them and was fun to be around. And so junior ROTC was, it was an interesting spot to be in. But man, I know it paid a lot of dividends for a lot of kids in there.
That is so cool. That's something. Yeah, that I never knew that. Like, I mean, of course, I never made fun of them. I don't have a good memory.
You could have made fun of me, man. I had a bad uniform.
Oh man. Well, I mean, I just you do see them as the weird kind of kids, the outcast kind of kids. But that makes a lot of sense. That's like they need that. That's the structure that they need. That's cool. That's a good perspective. I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah, and their whole mission is to build good citizens.
Yeah.
And so I remember that class, like I took it for all 4 years. And we did a lot of fun things. Like they take you out on like field trips. You get to go, they call it like land navigation.
Yeah.
And so you get like a compass and a map and a protractor and a pencil. And essentially they throw you out into the woods and you go with these little like teams and you go find points in the middle of the woods.
Oh, that's cool.
And I just remember as a kid, especially like, being in Springfield, we didn't live on any land or anything.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like the greatest thing ever. Like all of a sudden I get this freedom. I'm a freshman in high school. They kind of take me out and they're like, okay, go find these points. And there's no like GPS, there's no Google Maps. It's literally just a map and a compass and your pace count. Wow. And you go out there and find these points. And it really was cool. Like looking back, it really built your confidence. Like, wow, I can do this. Or like they take you up and you go on like a ropes course or go rappelling.
Yeah.
And you could just feel like, especially at that time, where you're coming out of junior high, where you're just trying to figure out, I just need a spot to fit in, man.
Yeah.
And it really built your confidence in a way that I think a lot of other sports or even academics, when you do well, it builds your confidence. And this was something for a lot of those kids that really built them
cool.
up.
Yeah, I had no idea. That's cool. I know the kids at my school, they would call it Harlingen, because that's I guess a city in Texas. So they would make a trip from Granbury to Harlingen, Texas, which is kind of by the coast. It's like close to Corpus Christi. So it's like from Granbury, that has to be at least a 6 or 7 hour drive.
That's a far drive.
On a bus, on a yellow dog. And so they would go down there on the yellow dog and they would have a blast because they would all talk about it in the class. Everybody would be hyped. Like, they would all be like, dude, Harlingen is like a week, like you'd all hear it. And like, even if you weren't in ROTC or JROTC, you'd hear about that place. So that's cool. That's cool. That's something I didn't know. So you didn't do track in high school?
No, I didn't. I did. I always found myself like being decent at like the endurance stuff. Like we would do, I'm sure you remember this, suicides or beep drill and stuff like that. We would always do stuff like that. And I always found myself being pretty decent at it. I was definitely not a sprinter. Yeah. But, track was never my jam. Like I had a bad experience in junior high and I just got beat up like all the time. I go out there and I would lose. I'm hyper competitive.
Oh yeah.
So I would lose every single race. And I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
And as I got a little bit taller and kind of thinned out a little bit more, I found like, oh, actually, you might be pretty decent at it. But I never went back to track.
Man, that's crazy. So when did you start your endurance your endurance sports?
Yeah, the military. When I went to college, I joined. They had a program called the Ranger Challenge, and it was essentially an intercollegiate competition between a lot of the universities. And so us being from Missouri State, we would compete against essentially like the Missouri Valley. I don't know if you know, like the Missouri Valley Conference in basketball. Yeah. You got like Creighton and Southern Illinois and all these different universities. And so essentially there'd be a competition and you would compete against everybody in the Missouri Valley,
Yeah.
in their ROTC programs, and they call them like Ranger Challenge.
Is this like as a team or individual?
Yeah, this is as a team.
Okay.
And so you get, I want to say it was like, I think it was like 6 or 8 man teams. I can't remember now. But you would do things like one rope bridge, and you'd build like a bridge out of rope. You'd cross a stream with your team. So you'd build something, you'd have somebody run out to the other side, wrap it around, you'd tighten it up, and then you'd be timed on how quickly you could get all your men, weapon, and equipment across.
Yeah.
And then they'd stop the time. And so that would be an event. You do land navigation as an event. You do rifle marksmanship. But the big event was this 10K ruck march. And so you'd have all your equipment on. You'd have they call them like a rubber duck, or basically like a rifle that was made out of rubber, and then a 35-pound rucksack. And you as a team, you'd have to be together, and you would all go and basically compete in a 10K road march.
Wow.
And for whatever reason, I loved it. Like, we went out there and we did fairly well on the first one, and I just got addicted to this endurance side. I'd never run a race before. I'd never done like a 5K.
Yeah.
Never done a marathon. And we went out and did it, and I was like, man, this is amazing. Like, I really, really like this. And so I just started looking into how can I do more of this.
Right.
And so there was a guy there in the graduate program who was also in the ROTC program with us. He had run at the University of South Carolina, the Gamecocks, and he was on their cross country team. So the dude was blazing fast. I mean, like, I probably could barely run for my high school team, and this guy had just got off his collegiate career.
Wow.
And he was phenomenal, because he just gave so much insight and information, and he just took me under his wing and was like, hey bro, like, if you want to get better, at this endurance stuff, at this running thing, like, come meet me at 5 a.m. This is a college student now.
Yeah.
Come meet me at 5 a.m. Out at the track on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we'll get you better.
Yeah.
And that's how it started for me, man.
Wow.
I just went out there and just suffered with this dude, just trying to stay anywhere near where this guy was at. And he was just so gracious. He gave his insight and helped me really get an understanding of endurance sports. And long story short, just kind of took off from there and really got into triathlon, got into marathon running.
That's crazy.
And really just loved it. Got bitten by the bug.
Yeah, man. I remember you told Daniel and me that story while we were on that run about you and your buddy who did that. You said that was your first triathlon ever?
My first triathlon ever was actually the Ironman triathlon.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah.
And so you swim, how many miles do you swim? 2?
Yeah, 2.4 miles, and then you do 112 on the bike, and then you do your marathon.
Dang, 26.2.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because the whole point of that, this was it was going into my junior year.
Yeah.
So the summer of my sophomore, junior year of college, my buddy and I, we were just looking up what's the hardest endurance thing that we could do online. And so it was all just crazy expensive stuff, like climb Mount Everest or do the Eco Challenge.
Yeah.
We're like poor college kids living off of ramen,
Yeah.
But as we looked on that like top 10 list, one of the things that we saw was Ironman triathlon. And I had never ridden, obviously I'd ridden like a BMX bike, but I never ridden like a road bike.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to freestyle swim. I knew how to kind of, survive in the pool essentially, but I'd never done any swimming. And so we saw the event and we're like, bro, how hard could this be? Like let's just sign up and do it.
Yeah.
And so we signed up for this thing, and I want to say it was like maybe a month and a half out.
Yeah.
So we sign up, and I ended up buying a bike, and he ended up like borrowing a bike, which the bike didn't even fit him.
Were they road bikes or?
They were road bikes.
Okay, so they were the right kind of bikes, but just.
They were the right kind, but it was so funny. Like if you look at some of his photos, even now, like he's on a bike that was made for somebody at least 6 to 8 inches taller than him.
Oh my gosh.
The dynamics were so far off. And it was
funny.
Yeah, the race was ridiculous, man. Like we went out there and just suffered all day long, but at the end of the day, it was all about one, you can't quit. You got to finish the
You gotta-
race.
yeah.
And then 2, it was all about who could beat the other person. And so
Yeah.
it ended up coming down to a sprint finish with the last mile. And I hadn't seen this dude for hours during the day, and he caught me. We sprinted it out at the very end, man.
That's crazy, man. That's a cool story, man. You used to talk to that guy?
Yeah. Actually, I talked with him probably about 4 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
We've
awesome.
actually got a phone call scheduled for. You're getting old when you got to schedule your phone calls. So
Yeah.
you're busy, but yeah, we got a call scheduled for next month.
That's awesome, man. You're super busy though, man. I saw you doing your little calendar in the room, so all your calendars, I should
Yeah.
say. Did you really plan out your year on that day?
Yeah, so me and my wife, what we like to do is we try and plan out our goals. So not necessarily like
Okay.
what meetings coming up or
I got you.
anything like that, but we actually use a program that Rick Warren did. It's called the Transformed Life,
Okay.
and he breaks down holistically your life into 7 key categories. And so what we like to do is take those 7 areas and then put goals to each of those areas. So things like obviously physical health, but it goes into things like financial health, vocational health, relational, emotional, spiritual. I'm missing one, but holistically, it just breaks down your whole life. And then what me and my wife do is we'll put down usually 1 to 2 goals within each one of those, and say, hey, what do we want to do this year? And we'll take time. We'll do prayer and fasting, and then we'll come back, revisit those goals, and say, okay, if this is what we're going to do, what are some changes? What are some disciplines that we need to put into place to achieve those? And then what we do is we look at them each week just to see, where are we at?
Yeah.
On track to do that.
That's awesome. And you do it usually at the that was at the beginning. So you do that at the beginning of the year each year?
Yeah, January 1. My wife and I will sit down and we'll put that list together. Then we'll take some time to pray and fast over that list, edit anything that we need to, and then we'll come back at the end of this month and be like, okay, these are the goals that we're going for.
Yeah.
And then we hold each other accountable to each one of those.
That's
So
awesome.
like she has goals for herself on like the emotional side, and I've got goals for myself on the emotional side. And so when we sit down and we talk, we're like, hey, how are you doing with processing past hurt here? Or, hey, how are you doing with a coworker that, is extra grace required, and so we just help each other
Yeah.
process through some
That's
things
awesome.
like that. And so it's been pivotal for us in our marriage, but just in our own personal growth.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's awesome. Accountability and in like the most deep and intimate way with your partner, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Taylor and I actually just had our 1-year anniversary, so
Did you guys?
yeah, isn't that crazy?
Dude, that's amazing.
It came by quick, man. It was crazy.
Which your guys' story is so cool. I mean, just the fact that like, okay, here you are, like the best friend of her brother,
Yep.
and like finding like that friendship going into a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
Like, dude, tell me a little bit about that, because like I don't think I've heard the full story from you guys and like
Yeah.
what that looked like.
Honestly, man, there is a story. Of course, there's always a story. I'll just start from the beginning. Okay, so of course, Daniel and I met in high school, sophomore year, I think, and I don't know what Taylor was doing then. I didn't know her, and like I think occasionally I would go hang out with him, maybe like, every so often I would go to his house. So I probably saw her like that. I remember throughout my high school career, probably like 4 or 5 times, and then once I hit college, excuse me, I didn't talk to her. Like we really weren't friends at all. And then I think my junior year of college, Daniel and I were like, dude, let's plan a trip to California. We'll stay with his brother lives up there and he's got cousins up there. So we took a trip and it was me, Daniel, Taylor, and Jada. And
Okay.
so we went up there, we had a great time, and like still nothing came about it. But then like, over the years, like me going over to their house, and then she would be over more, cause she went to school, and then she was around the house more. And so we were able to just interact more. And so naturally I'm like a nice guy. I would maybe flirty. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. So I would just be myself around her. And then like over the years that just accumulated. And then we were around each other way more. I guess before we started dating, we were around each other way more. And then I guess after I graduated college, or my senior year of college, we started to text more and talk more. But it was just as friends, and like,
Yeah.
in my mind, I was always like, okay, I know there's codes. I know there's rules. All right. This is Daniel's sister. That's my best friend.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay away. Like, I did everything in my power to stay away. And then once we started to text more and talk more, they went on a cruise senior year of college, and they came back. They drove like 6 hours to come to Lubbock, and they didn't actually make my graduation, but they were there to just celebrate with us. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And so they took the time out of their, 6 hours out of their day, and then they chilled with us. And so that left a little bit of an impression on me. And then we remained in contact. And then, of course, me and Daniel moved to Marble Falls. And we would make trips up here to Georgetown, go to church, and then we would just be around her way more. And so once that started happening, I was able to be around her, not with like a family setting, with Daniel around sometimes, but more of just slowly one-on-one, And then I got to know her, other than like stories like, your brother tells about his sister, which, aren't always the most attractive things or like the most, like the sweetest stories. But so I got
those brother-sister stories tend to bring out the worst in the other person.
Yeah,
don't they?
exactly. So I got to know her like on a one-on-one basis. And then we got to the point where we were like, okay, maybe there's something here. So let's try to like attack these one-on-ones. Let's try to move head on and actually intentionally say, okay, let's go on a date. Let's hang out without Daniel, right? Mm-hmm. And so we started to do that, and I was still fighting it, man. I still didn't want it to happen. Yeah. I was like, I can't hang out. I'm busy, but I didn't do anything. Marble Falls, there's nothing to do. And then once we started to hang out, it kind of just, my heart changed. She brought me to church with you guys, and her heart changed. That's the biggest thing. That was like, she was a different person from when I first met her to when we started dating and stuff. She was a totally different person. Really involved with Awaken. She was going to all the women's groups and the small groups. And
what was it that was so attractive to you, I guess, from that those initial meetings to like at that point? Because you said like, man, she really changed. Like, what was it?
So throughout my college career, I would go to church, but it was never consistent as it was, and as consistent as I wanted it to be. Because the church I went to in Lubbock didn't really feel like a home church. Because I would always go to the early services, and the college service was later, because that felt more like home to me earlier. Mm-hmm. And then I also didn't want to be surrounded by a bunch of people who potentially could be distractions. And so I went earlier, and then of course that wasn't as consistent. But then once we started to hang out, she would bring me to church. Like, I would come up on a Sunday morning, and she would bring me to church. And her longing for that community, and I guess for the Lord, I mean, that's really what drew my initial attraction to her. Yeah. And it's like that almost sounds a little cheesy, but it's like the honest truth. Like,
I totally get that, man.
Yeah.
I totally get that. Like with Vanna and I, like, I wasn't even saved when we got together. And I was saying all the right things,
right?
But like, I knew, like, I wasn't. Not that I really could care less about like following the Lord.
Yeah.
But the thing that attracted me to Savannah was her love for the Lord.
Yeah.
Which was so weird for somebody who really could care less. Yeah. That was the thing that really attracted me to her. And it's kind of hard to say. Like, I think there was really like a sweetness that was there that I couldn't put my finger on. I didn't know quite what it was, but there was a sweetness there that I was really attracted to.
Right.
Even without knowing God,
Yeah.
Like, man, I don't know what that is, but I really love that in her.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what happened to me, man. Because I knew her before, and I was like, I don't, that's not the girl that I envisioned in my head for myself. But the Lord had other plans, and I mean, it was cool. I really do think that's what it was, because that's the only thing that was different from the past to the present, to that time we started to meet up.
Yeah.
And even at that point, I was like, man, I really like this girl, but I was still fighting pretty hard.
Yeah.
And then I just, one day I was just like, okay, I'll just lean into this.
Yeah.
Lean into whatever this is. And it worked.
Yeah.
It worked. Yeah.
So what was that conversation like then with Danny when you're like, okay, man, like, hey,
oh man, so
I'm taking a step here in this relationship.
Yeah. So he kind of knew. He's not a dumb guy. He had a feeling that something was up, and apparently everybody did besides me and Taylor, because her mom was
so everybody else saw it.
Yeah. Her mom was like, what's going on between you guys? Like way before this, and like I was like, that's weird, whatever. But he kind of had a feeling, and so one day I approached him, and I was like, I texted him because I was a little nervous, and I was like, dude, I think I like your sister, man. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, if you don't want me to, I won't. If you don't want me to, I won't. But like, can I like take on a date, or like, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings, bro? I don't want to interrupt our friendship, because we were friends first, like, and so he was like, dude, I don't care. Like, if anybody in this world was to date my sister, I know you well enough, and I would love it to be you.
Yeah.
And so he's really been gracious about the whole thing. Like, it's cool.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's cool. I can't believe that, because I don't know if I would have been the same way,
Dude, my brother-in-law, I actually knew him before he dated my sister.
Oh, that's cool.
And so all of us were in the military, and I remember coming back from my deployment in Afghanistan and got an email from him who he was heading into country, and my sister was in country as well. All of us there. And I remember reading the email, and essentially what he said was, hey, man, I'm not asking for permission. I'm just letting you know I'm going on a date with your sister.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Man.
So, romance started there in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have done that, but I lived with him, so
you would have figured it out.
And my door didn't lock at the place, so he could have messed with me when I was sleeping.
Yeah.
Vulnerable. Dude, I wanted to ask you about your training, your current training. What is your current training like? Because it's not a secret anymore that you were going to be in the National Guard. You're in. When does your boot camp start?
Well, we're still trying to work through that right now, trying to get a date. But I'm training in earnest right now, getting back into the military. But yeah, basically, I'm doing 2-a-days. So I'm trying to do some sort of strength or CrossFit in the afternoon, and then I'm doing some sort of run training in the mornings.
Yeah.
And based on my endurance background, I got really into triathlon there for a while and got pretty competitive. Basically enough to pay for my hobby by winning some smaller races and stuff like that. We used to joke and be like, yeah, it pays for your addiction essentially.
Yeah.
Is what we're doing. I'm nowhere near where that level of fitness was, but I actually have gotten back together with my old coach, and so she's training me up for a lot of my endurance stuff. So this morning, for instance, I was out there. I did it was 6 1,200 repeats, and then what was it, 800 repeats. And so just brutal workouts, that are, if you're not familiar with that, like essentially like 1,200 is 3 laps of a track, 800, 2 laps of a track.
Right.
And you're just putting down times where you're right on the red line every single time.
Yeah.
And so, it's a good shock to the system, trying to get my body back into shape for sure.
You've been doing that for a couple of weeks now, right?
Been doing that now for probably about 3.5, 4 months.
Okay. Yeah.
So getting back into it, and then like tomorrow, I'll get out there with big rucksack, essentially a big backpack with a bunch of weight, and go out there, do like a 12-mile ruck, come back,
pounds.
throw on the running shoes, and do a run, and then that afternoon do a little strength session. So
that's crazy, man.
Yeah. So this 35-year-old man, I'm getting beat up and broke down. So trying to get my recovery on point too.
Yeah, that's good. What are you doing for recovery?
So sleep, number one. Trying to get a much better like sleep hygiene. Just this, everybody knows this, but just trying to put away the devices at least half an hour before bed. Making sure I'm getting at least 7 hours of sleep, which for my schedule, is pretty difficult to try and get
like
7, but at least 7. And then working on like foam rollers, working on some stretching, and I've been kind of playing around a little bit with some like Pilates and yoga, just because being my age, like you did, I think you just get tight, and like you just want your muscles to elongate.
Yeah.
And so I feel like my stride is a little bit shorter than what I remember. And so just trying to elongate some of those muscles, especially after intense training, and get them so that they're not just firing on all cylinders, but are actually able to get the maximum like length. And so I feel like if you listen to any like Tom Brady, like TB12,
Yes.
he does those elongation, trying to do a lot of that sort of stuff. And so I'm kind of dabbling with that because I never did that before, man.
Right.
Coach would be like, hey, I want you to go do, a cool down. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I got the workout in.
Yeah.
But man, I'm telling you, like once you hit like 30 and where I'm at now, 35, it's like that really does matter. Like getting in the accessory work, it really matters. And I can see it in my performance. Like when I skip it for a couple of days, it's like, yeah, I definitely notice.
I definitely need that. That's crazy. You're not so TB12, that's a good person to look to for reference on.
Dude, if I could be anywhere near that sort of level in my mid 40s, dude, that'd be amazing.
That's crazy, man. You're not spending $1 million like LeBron on recovery.
I wish.
Yeah, man, that's crazy.
If I had that in the bag, I don't know if I'd be going back to the National Guard.
That's man. So when does that start? You said May, right? That's when you're moving, and
yeah, that's what we're looking at. Yeah,
Okay.
So May is the hope to be able to go and kind of finish up the initial like paperwork and then the training and get into it in earnest. But yeah, me and my wife, it was kind of a weird deal. Like being a lead pastor at the church, we had just been feeling like God was calling us in kind of a new season, a new direction. And we're like, man, what does this look like? Because we have a heart for this city, have a heart for Awaken, and we're like just trying to figure that out. And it's so interesting too, like especially in the faith journey where you feel like there's something there, but you're not quite sure what that looks like.
yeah,
And I'm a type A guy, so for me, it's just like, no, I'll plan it and move it forward. And, even if it doesn't fit, like we'll fit the square peg into the round hole, like
Right.
with enough force.
yeah,
But, being a pastor, it's like, man, how does this look, in my faith journey? And feeling this call to go back into the military was pretty difficult, if I'm honest. Like trying to figure out, is this God? Is this a bad burrito? Did I have something last
Right.
night and this is just bad indigestion, Ben? Like this isn't really God. But trying to process that. And we just came to the spot where we felt like the Lord was leading us to a new assignment in a different way.
yeah,
Where with the National Guard, we still have the opportunity to stay in the area after the training, still be able to minister in this area.
that's great.
And at the same time, be able to be in a new community, one, to be able to serve our country, but then also to be a light, in a pretty dark place. I mean, I've spent, many years on active duty, and I love the military, love the guys there, but it's a dark place. It really is. And so for me, I just have a heart to see people know God and not know religion. I think a lot of people have this misconception of, especially Christianity, of like that it's religion. I've never seen it that way. I've always seen it as a relationship, and I think a lot of that has to do with me coming to faith later in life.
Yeah.
Actually, this year will be 10 years now
Wow.
of following the Lord.
Yeah.
But it was a catalytic moment for me, realizing that it wasn't about what I do or don't do, because that's what religion is essentially. It's like, do this, don't do that, and recognizing it was all about relationship with God and how do I know God. And so we just felt called to go back into that community and that space, and really excited about the journey ahead.
That's unique, man. That's unique that you didn't have that prior. Like, I mean, honestly, who knows if it's a relationship or not? When you're born and you start going to church immediately, it's really not a relationship. It's kind of like hey, you're going to go to church because that's what we're supposed to do, right? And that starting 10 years ago, it's like you're like, okay, I'm an adult. I have a fully cognitive awareness of like what I want, and then what it is that I want with the Lord, if there is a Lord, and you go through all these things prior, and then you figure that out.
It's like you've got to have a baseline to start. Like, is there a God?
Yeah.
And for me, I grew up in the church, but I had a really, really bad experience. I didn't have a great relationship with my dad, and a lot of what I saw in the church, it was religion. And it's no secret, like with me and my dad, like it's been a difficult time to reconcile that relationship. And as a kid, you associate, especially religion, with people that are closest to that.
Right.
I think Gandhi said it. He says, "I love your Christ, but I don't love your Christians."
Yeah.
And that's the way I felt. I felt that way. I felt like it was really hypocritical. I felt like if this is what Christianity is, I really don't want a whole lot to do with it. And so the first opportunity that I got, I left, and so it was out of the church, and really, again, had no relationship with God, but was out of the church for well over a decade, all during my time in the military. And what changed for me was actually my wife. Like we were kind of talking about it earlier. Like there was something there I couldn't really put my finger on, but I was so attracted to. And that for me was this catalytic moment when I recognized that she wasn't doing this because she had to do this. Like you hear that from a lot of people. It's like, well, don't do this, don't do that. Like God is the cosmic killjoy. Mm-hmm. And that's really how I associated religion. That's how I associated God, was, he's this cosmic killjoy in the sky. And who cares what I do with my sexual life? Who cares what I do with, what I drink or don't drink? Mm-hmm. Really, who cares? And when I met my wife, it wasn't about like doing these rules. It was all about, she wanted to please a heavenly Father, like in a way that I had never really experienced before, and that really brought me on this journey. From that point forward, at 26, to say, okay, what does this look like? It's one, if I'm going to go to church, I need to know that this is real. And so I went down this like academic study, bro, where I was getting a ton of books and just seeing like, where did the Bible come from? Yeah. What is Scripture? Who was the historical Jesus?
From scratch, yeah.
I was looking at Buddhism and Islam, and I really just said, okay, if I'm going to start somewhere, let's just start here and see, one, is there a God? And then two, when it comes to these religions, like, what is truth?
Right.
Like Pontius Pilate says it to Jesus there on trial. He says, what is truth? And I think that was the question I was asking myself, during that point in time in my life, was like, what is truth? What does that look like? And so whether that was within a religion, whether that was in a relationship, whatever that was, I was just looking for truth. Mm-hmm. And I was honestly, I was open to anything at that point. Like whatever I could look at the world and see, this makes sense. In my 26 years of age, that lens in which I looked at the world, I was looking for truth. And that journey led me surprisingly back to Christianity and back to Jesus himself personally.
Wow. That's crazy. So how long ago did you start Awaken?
Yeah, so we launched Awaken in 2018.
Okay.
And we moved out here to Austin in the fall of 2016 to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of planning prior to, and yeah, that's crazy, man. So one thing I wanted to ask you is like, so you're the lead pastor. You essentially start this church, right? Not you solely, but you're the face of the church essentially, right? Besides Jesus and the Lord, right?
Yeah.
You're the face of Awaken. When people go to Awaken, they love it because of the people, But I wanted to know, like, how is it on your day-to-day life being a pastor? Like, how does that affect your day-to-day life before 2018 when you launched? Like, what was your day-to-day life and how was it different from now?
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me.
Yeah. So prior to launching the church, when we moved out here, it's just this dream. My wife and I, we came to the conclusion that we felt like God was calling us to start a move of God and a community of God in a city that was highly influential, as well as spiritually unreached. Essentially, for people like me, honestly, it was who I was. I felt called to go and
find them.
Yeah, to help them. Like my life was changed for the better in so many ways. And it wasn't like I wasn't trying to push anything. It's kind of like a person who sees a great movie and they can't help but want to share that movie with other people. Yeah. Like, bro, you got to check this out. That was really the heart behind it. There was no like financial plan, like, or anything like that. It was really just like, we found so much joy, in our relationship with the Lord and wanted to share that with other people. And so we felt, like God was calling us to go take that step. Long story short, we landed on Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
And so we moved out here, and I had no plan, man. I had no plan. All I knew is there are people in my neighborhood. Let's start with being a good neighbor. And so I was that guy. Like, we moved in, and the very next week we baked a bunch of cookies and knocked on everybody's door and handed them cookies, which I didn't realize was kind of a backfire, because they're like, oh, we should be doing this for you. But I was like, no, like, I'm new to the neighborhood. Like, I just wanted to meet some people.
That's cool.
So we knocked on everybody's door, handed cookies out, and then said, hey, we're hosting a barbecue next month. We'd love to invite you to it because we want to know our neighbors.
Right.
And I had no idea who was going to show up. And so we decided to do the barbecue in the driveway, in the front, because that's, you can kind of peek out your window and be like, do I want to go over there? Do I not want to go over there? So we hosted it, and it was funny, man. Like, I'm out there in the front. I'm cooking the burgers and dogs. We've got like a couple tables lined up. Like, hey, just bring whatever dish you want. And you know how it is. Like, if you ever host an event, like, you do all this planning and prep work for it, and then like 10 minutes before you're there, and you're like, nobody's showing up to this.
Right.
Why is anybody going to show up? It's the same way. Like, the time comes and there's nobody there, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, I moved my family, halfway across the country.
Start questioning everything.
Yeah, I question everything. And I'm like, what am I doing? And so I'm kind of flipping some burgers and dogs. And finally, one person shows up. It's probably like 5 minutes after, we said it was going to start. And we just start to talk. And a little bit after that, a few more minutes go by, and, family comes over. One or two more people. And probably within half an hour, we're sitting there, and we have almost the entire neighborhood, like the entire block is there. We had probably 60 adults and another 20 kids running around the street. It looked like a block party.
Right over here?
No, man, it was another neighborhood in Sonoma. And so that was how we started. I just got to know people and got numbers. And then after that, would call them up and be like, hey, you want to go grab some coffee? I'd love to hear your story. And basically what I wanted to do was, I've asked this question every day when I wake up as a pastor, like, how can I add value to people's life? Especially in the American church, like, you look at the TV and you see these televangelists, like, asking for people's money. Mm-hmm. I just think about, like, these little widows, who are there on, a fixed income, and these guys are like taking their money, and everybody sees right through it, right? It's like, oh, there'll be a blessing for you. And it's like, right, wrong, or indifferent, like, as a pastor, like, you're always fighting that uphill battle. And like, what I wanted to do is just let them know, like, I wanted to add value to their life. And so nobody even knew that I was a pastor. And unless you asked me directly, like, nobody really knew that I was a Christian at that point. Right. I just wanted to add value. Mm-hmm. And so I just looked for ways to help out. So I was helping people move. I was helping people set up fences. And we just tried to be involved in the community as much as possible. Yeah. And so what ended up happening was we ended up starting what we called like a discovery Bible study. And in fact, I still have them going on today. Every Thursday morning at 7 a.m., I've got a discovery Bible study that meets at a coffee shop. And it's atheists and agnostics and new Christians that are just interested to discover who Jesus is. Yeah. And we just started there, and it just began to grow. And we started a Bible study in our living room. Had like 4 people show up on that first day. Yeah. Kind of looking around like, okay, this is a start. Like, it's not just me and my wife anymore. There's actually somebody that showed up here. And over the next probably year and a half, we just began to build a team and tried to add value to people's lives, help them know who God was, and basically end up launching the church in September of 2016 after doing a bunch of leadership training and a marketing campaign and all that. And it was crazy, man. I mean, you show up there on that first day from a couple people in your living room to seeing, I think we had like 350 people on opening day. Wow. There in the auditorium. I'm just looking out there like blown away at what God was doing. And the cool part is this, it's so different, I feel like, than athletic endeavors or academic endeavors where it's like you put a lot of pressure on yourself and you deliver.
Yeah.
Where as a pastor, I felt like I don't deliver anything. Like really, I'm here to set the groundwork. And when I looked out there, honestly, on that first day, it was so crazy because I just felt like I just got a front row seat to see God do something incredible. And it wasn't even that we had that amount of people show up. The first 2 weeks, we saw 20 people give their life to God, like start a relationship with God in those first 2 weeks. And for me, that was the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Like for me, like anytime somebody says, "Man, I want to truly follow Jesus," I know what that meant for me. I know what it meant like for me to go from anxiety-ridden, depressed, empty, to finally giving my life to the Lord and finding that fullness and wholeness.
Yeah.
And so when I see that, when people make that decision, I want to do that. It's not just a number to me. That is somebody's soul. That's somebody who's changing not just their life, but a legacy, their family's life.
Right.
You know, if they're a mom or a dad, like now their kids get to see God in them. And so that for me, it was just incredible to see what God did. So I just felt like I got a front row seat to the whole thing.
Yeah. And then just like that endurance, you got kind of get like kind of hooked to it, right? You want to see more of it happen. And
you do, man. Like those moments are so special because I'll tell you this, my favorite moment had nothing to do with Sunday morning during that time. Actually, my favorite moment was a guy and his family by the name of David Lynch. He was in my neighborhood. And he was, I think he's probably more agnostic when we first met, but we actually met at our neighborhood park there in Sonoma. It's right behind the Kalahari.
Oh, yeah.
Probably like a mile as the bird flies. Real nice neighborhood, beautiful neighborhood. But I just been praying during that time. I was like, God, would you use me to like meet somebody to help bring them to you? And remember me and my kids, we were out there at the park in the afternoon, and there was a guy there with him and his daughter, and they were playing at the park. And it was one of those where normally I'm the one engaging, it's like, hey, how are you? But for whatever reason, I just sort of held back. And I want to say at the time, like I wasn't even really focused on like trying to go meet him. I had a bunch of other stuff that I was doing at the time. And he came up to me. He was like, hey, how are you? I'm David, and our kids were playing together. And we ended up connecting, and we ended up inviting them over. I think it was like the next week to have dinner. And so they came over, and I didn't know this at the time, but his wife, Stephanie, I don't think she was anxiety ridden. Like when she had her first kid, Claire, she was so anxiety ridden. I don't think that she had left the house for like 8 or 9 months. I mean, It was so much social anxiety. She had been a school teacher before that, but was so riddled with this social anxiety that it really was debilitating for her. And so they said, yeah, we'll come over for dinner, because I had met, Claire had met a friend essentially. And they're like, well, for our daughter, we'll take her over and, we'll have dinner. Mm-hmm. And so they come over and, they bring some wine, bring some food, bring some cheese, we have a great time. And at this point in time, he doesn't know who I am from Adam.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember her asking, so what do you do? Because I had asked them a bunch of questions, knew what they did for a living. And she goes, so what do you do? And Vanna, my wife, she goes, well, Ben's a pastor. And I remember the look on their face, just like they went white. They're like, oh my gosh. Which immediately, this is so hilarious. Like immediately she's like, did I offend you by bringing the wine? Like, I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we're just like, no, not at all. Like, no, you didn't offend us. But they have this conversation, and like, you could tell like just uneasy, like, and you could tell like he's ready to get out of the house. Yeah. And so he leaves the house, and I didn't learn this till later on, but as soon as they get in the van, as they're ready to head back to the house, he goes, we are never going back there again.
Wow.
He's like, not only did I not know he was a Christian, he's a pastor. Like, are you kidding me? But that relationship, we began just to meet up. Yeah. And I began to share my story with him and what God had done in my life. And over the next probably 6 months, David ended up giving his life to the Lord. And what ended up happening was he became such an impact for people in that neighborhood. Like he started his own group, his own Bible study for his neighbors. He really became a pastor to his neighborhood because we lived several blocks away. And what God began to do in his life, I mean, was nothing short of miraculous. Like Stephanie not only got over her anxiety, she became a leader within Claire's school and became a leader at the church.
Wow.
David the same way. And I mean, just from night to day, you could just see their life completely change, find purpose and meaning behind it. And so for me, like those numbers are awesome, but it's stories like that I think about during those early days of the church and think, man, it was so cool just to be able to be a part of that and to see what God did. So those are some that I relish.
Yeah.
I think about.
That's awesome, man. That's crazy. That is so crazy. Man, I really wanted to touch on your experience as an Army Ranger, but it's a little past 11. I don't know if you got to get out of here or not. But
I got a few more minutes. We can hold on for a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So, I guess it's total 180 on subjects, but
yeah.
What drove you to be an Army Ranger, man? Like that is so crazy because whenever I think of Army Ranger, I think of Navy SEAL. I think of like the toughest of the tough, the baddest of the bad, like the most. And not to say that you're. I
always joke with people. I'm like, I was just too dumb to quit.
Oh.
Yeah. No. When I went into the ROTC program, I knew that I wanted to lead soldiers, and I loved the old war movies, man. Like my dad was military. I love watching the old war movies, and so for me, I just love that idea, being able to lead soldiers into combat, to be able to protect our nation, to be able to protect essentially like the freedoms that we have here. Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds super idealistic, but honestly, like at the time, that was my motivation. Like I love that idea of being able to help protect and be able to lead.
Yeah.
And so for me, being an Army officer was the next step, and that's where doing the ROTC program. I ended up graduating from Missouri State and then going in as an infantry officer. And as an infantry officer, you get the opportunity to go to Ranger School right afterward. And so for me, Ranger School, it was it's just a school. And that's why I tell people, it's like I'm not like some super ninja warrior guy. Like I wasn't a part of the special operations community. I was a Ranger qualified infantry officer.
Yeah.
And with that, you get to go to this school called Ranger School, and it's essentially a leadership school in small unit tactics. And what they do is they take you through 3 different phases. So you go through, you've got your Darby phase, which is essentially your crawl phase.
Okay.
You've got your mountain phase in Dahlonega, Georgia, which is like your walk phase, and then you've got your swamp phase out of Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, which is your run phase. And so each phase, they teach you about small unit tactics. And basically what you end up doing is you carry a heavy rucksack. You don't really sleep a lot. You get in the field, you maybe get an hour of sleep a night, and you get 2 MREs a day, which sounds like a decent amount, but you're burning so many calories because you're walking tons of miles every single day. So you're at a caloric deficit every single day. So you're incredibly hungry, your body's wasting away, and you're not getting any sleep. And then you've got to lead your peers, which it's a leaderless environment in the sense that everybody is the same rank, which is nothing. You're just Ranger.
Yeah.
And so you've got to lead all these guys to accomplish a mission with a limited amount of time and a lot of stress. And so they put you in this environment. It's essentially a pressure cooker to see at your worst, can you lead other people to accomplish a mission?
Yeah.
And that's essentially what Ranger School is. And so, I was fortunate enough to go through the course and learned a lot about small unit tactics, but learned a whole lot more about myself.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's crazy, dude. Like, I can't even imagine. Whenever I'm at a caloric deficit, I'm never at a caloric deficit, so that's not even anything I ever have to worry about. That's crazy.
You live off of being hangry the whole time.
Maybe we need to send Taylor to that school, man. Her hangriness is bad.
Next level.
She gets next level hangry, man. She would not make it in that school, but that's crazy, man.
Yeah. So you get through the course, and at the end of the course, you get you graduate as a ranger. Essentially, you're ranger qualified, and then at that point, you go back into your unit. And that's where any junior leader that's in the military, I would recommend going to Ranger School, because you learn so much about yourself, and it just makes you, the principles that you learn there help you in everyday life.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you ever read Jocko Willink's book, Extreme Ownership.
Yeah, not all of it, but
so many of those lessons, are what you learn in Ranger School. And,
wow.
And you learn it in essentially a trial by fire. Like, it isn't just... It's hard to teach that sort of leadership. It's hard to teach people about yourself and that sort of, you can sit there and be like, keep pushing forward. You can read that in a book. You can hear that in a podcast. But until you live that, until you experience it and walk through it, it's just head knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
We say a lot of times in the church, you have to take it, those 12 inches from head to heart. It's essentially taking that knowledge, going from your head and saying, no, this is who you are. And it really creates in you this ability to know that in the worst possible situations, like you've got a lot more in the tank than you realize. There's a lot more in you than you really recognize. And it gives you the opportunity to put it to action, to put it to work. So it becomes this, now it's like there's this deep reservoir now where it's like if I'm working late, it's like it's not that big of a deal. Like I've lived off of no sleep for multiple days on end. Man, I'm really hungry, or that's okay. Or man, I've got a difficult coworker. I know what that looks like. I've had really difficult coworkers,
right.
And we've had to come together and I've had to cast vision and lead in the worst of situations. So I know if I could do it there, I can do it in this situation.
Yeah.
And so, and Ranger School it's just, it's 60 days of what most people learn in a lifetime, essentially.
Right.
And you take that and some guys take that and they're able to use it. And other guys, that was a moment in time. And I think the guys that really benefit from it are guys that are able to take it, contextualize it, and then use it in their life later on. And I think for anybody, anytime you go through a difficult circumstance, anytime you go through, pain and suffering of really any kind, you really have two choices. You can either sit there and it can just be a moment in time that you endured and you made it through. And for I'm not trying to take away anything from any sort of circumstance with that people go through, but that's one way to do it.
Right.
But if you can take it, you can harness it, and you can learn from it, the lessons that you end up learning from that end up becoming not just the things that can define you, but the things that can lead to purpose. We have a saying at Awaken that I say a lot, like the pain of your past can really lead to a platform for your purpose if you let it, and those painful moments in your past that you go through, if you can take those, harness them, learn from them, they'll really lead to the very thing that you were designed to do. And so I look at it now through the lens of God putting me in those situations, in difficult situations to learn from and say, okay, God, I don't want to just take 2020, for instance. I don't want to just suffer through 2020.
Right.
We're sitting here January 2021.
Yeah.
I don't want to just be like, I never want to talk about that year. That's just a year that's in the past. Like, I really want to look at it and say, okay, God, I definitely did not like that year. Right? Like everybody else. I don't think anybody liked 2020. But instead of just ignoring it and moving past, like, what can I take from this?
Yeah.
God, what are you trying to teach me through this? And if I'm open enough to evaluate myself, evaluate the circumstances that I was in, and then use that to say, okay, this is the lesson. How do I move forward with it? It changes how you view everything in your life. It changes how you view pain. It changes how you deal with difficult circumstances because you know that there's purpose behind it. Like one of my favorite verses is the one where it says, for those that are called according to his purpose, right? So God works all things together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. If I am called by God, if I'm a child of God, I know that there's going to be bad situations.
Right.
That verse doesn't say that there's not going to be bad situations. A lot of people go in and they think, oh, well, I'm a Christian now, so life's going to be easy. No, it's actually probably going to be harder.
Right.
But I can have confidence in the fact that any bad situation that comes up, God may not be causing it, but he's allowed it, and he will work it together for good. I don't care what the situation is. I don't care if it's cancer. I don't care if it's a death. I don't care if it's the loss of a job. God will use it for good if I keep pressing into him.
Right.
And say, God, I don't like it. I didn't want this, but would you use this? There's a couple in our church incredible couple who lost their daughter. And that night, I remember them saying that they had one of two choices. This is going to define them, they said, no matter what. This is going to define them. But they had one of two choices. They could either let this build up bitterness, or they could use this and say, God, this is not at all what we wanted, but would you use this for good? We don't know how it's going to be good,
Right.
but we know you do. And would you use this for good in some way? And to see what God has done in their life, they're an inspiration to me. By the people that they've touched, and even their daughter's legacy now, a year and a half, almost 2 years now.
Wow.
Her legacy still lives on. A lot of people have been changed because of it. And so I think you really have two options. You have two choices in those sorts of situations.
Right. Yeah. That's beautiful. That's cool. I love hearing people's perspectives, and this is good insight, because this is a lot of insight that I didn't know. That it's wisdom, right? You have this wisdom and you're passing it on to me and to whoever else watches this. So that's awesome. Appreciate it. Yeah. Dude, well, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man.
By the way, this is called the AV Club.
Nice.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny.
I love it.
Pretty clever little name. But thank you, Ben, for showing up today. Thank you for being here and taking your time. I really appreciate it. And if you really think about it, not you, but through the power of God, through you, you essentially connected me with Taylor, who hopefully I'll be with for a long, long time, a couple more years, many, many more years maybe. So I appreciate that. I'm thankful for that, and thankful for our relationship and our friendship. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on.
Honored to be here, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, sir. We'll see you later.